morning, everyone, and happy Wednesday, September the 4th. It's 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. We're super excited to be here with the Petro IT crew today. We're all super proud of ourselves for taking showers and putting on makeup, right, Crash? Guys, this is some really pertinent information right now because of all of the recent rules and proposed rules. So we're excited to get into TVC-compliant PODS Database. We're doing a lot of stuff at PODS right now, and we're super grateful for not just Petro IT, but all of our community and all of our members that are volunteering to help us out moving the ball forward. So with that, we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to do just a couple of housekeeping items. One, first and foremost, is a safety moment. We want to make sure it's hurricane season is we're in the middle of it, right? And I think somebody told me the other day, this is going to be the best hurricane season, right? But each year it gets worse and worse, right? And so we really have to do our due diligence to prepare, right? So three things here that we want to call your attention to is making a plan, building a kit, and staying informed, right? So making a plan, obviously, right? Like definitely talk to your family members or the people that live with you and develop a plan and stick to that plan, right? And then of course make a kit, right? Some people call it go bags, some people call it what have you. I grew up in South Louisiana, so I know when the weather starts to get bad, you got to fill up the bathtub with ice, right? Not just to make hurricanes with later, but also to use for drinking water, right? And then also, and most importantly too, is to stay informed, right? Try to do the best that you can to keep eyes and ears open, have phone numbers of your neighbors, right? This last hurricane, our neighbor let us know that the power was back on before Centerpoint did. So it's always good to keep in touch and keep communicating in this season and let's be there for each other. We're real good at that in the PODS community, but let's keep an eye out for each other for sure in this hurricane season. All right, so a couple of housekeeping items. We're super excited that you guys are all here today. We want to make this as interactive as possible. So make sure that you go on and you ask your questions in the questions box or in the chat box, and we're going to get to those as time permits. And then also we have some polling questions that we're going to put out there to get some feedback so that we know kind of who we're talking to. We run the gamut of just a ton of different types of people that attend these PODScasts. So we're really wanting to make sure that we're speaking to our audience in and of itself. So engage in those polling if you can. If you have a secondary monitor, try to put that in your primary monitor because sometimes it gives us a little bit of trouble to respond in your secondary or tertiary monitors. All right, and then we're going to have some contact information at the end. A quick review of the agenda. We're going to talk about achieving a TVC-compliant database. The crew here is going to talk about data dictionaries, source data and documents, QA/QC, and then they're going to do a live demo. I'm super impressed. I mean, I've seen a lot of presentations in my career, and it's always very exciting whenever somebody's going to do a live demo. That always makes me think that obviously the software works, right? If they're willing to show it live. So no pressure, Natalie. All right, so a couple of things about PODS real quick. We celebrated our 25th anniversary last year. Really cool. So 26 years that PODS has been around, and we are the industry platform and community for efficient pipeline data management. So over 200 pipeline operators in 38 countries all over the world use the PODS database to organize and manage their data. So whereas here in the US, we really focus a lot on regulatory compliance, which the crew is going to talk about today. But also it's just a great way to have visibility and organize your data for efficient and optimized pipeline operations, as well as safety. So the data model is really great, or at least we think so. It's open to all platforms and softwares, but especially geared towards the Esri platform, being that the vast majority of our members are on the Esri platform. We're working on some stuff here recently to modularize a lot of the data tables so that they can be affixed to any data model, not just PODS. So we're really trying to open it up to more pipeline members, right? And of course, it's just a great business risk compliance and decision-making tool. So that compliance is what we're going to talk about today. And as always, asset knowledge is essential to our confident compliance, enterprise risk management, and serves as a base for modern operators management systems. We're going to talk quite a bit about that at our upcoming fall forum next month in Houston. So make sure that you've signed up for that to get into that conversation. So whereas we started with as a data model, we've really ended up as a community. And so we have a great group of people that all get together and innovate and share data in order to advance pipeline safety through the digital twin. And we have great supportive members, just like PHMSA, who uses the PODS data model for the NPMS system. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is TVC, but again, if you have your data in PODS, it's just a much easier way to ensure compliance and avoid those strongly worded emails from PHMSA after you submit your NPMS uploads and annual reports. All right, so that's it about PODS. I've already talked too long about PODS, but y'all know that's what I love to do. So today we have with us the effervescent Natalie. Natalie's been a GIS professional for close to 20 years now, and she started with Petro IT in 2017. She's just a shining star in our community, and we're really, really grateful to have her here today. We also have Crash. Of course, he was named that because he's an excellent driver. Crash is the IT extraordinaire, and he's a AVP. What is AVP, Crash?
Associate Vice President.
Associate Vice President. Okay, I thought it meant like, always Vice President or anytime Vice President, because you are the anytime guy, right? Like you're always there, you're always supportive, and you always do a great job. And then, of course, last but not least, my cousin, Mr. Rick Roberts. We're actually not related, but I just think it's the coolest. So Rick has been in the industry. Well, you know what? The child labor laws were very loose in the 1900s, and so he's been in the industry for 50 years now, but he's just a sprightly 52. So I'm so excited to have Rick here. He's just has just an incredible asset knowledge, and he has his own think tank, him in that hat, right? So I'm super excited to have this whole crew here today. Rick is going to walk us through a few things for a baseline today. And Rick, I'm gonna hand it off to you in just a second. Again, y'all know how much I love talking. If we don't mind, I'm gonna launch the first poll so that we can kind of level set like we talked about who's on the call and who's on first, right? So that we can learn a little bit more out of everybody before Rick gets rocking and rolling. So the first polling question is, does your company have a data standard or a data dictionary? So for the nerds on the call, you can choose between 1 and 2. And then for the rest of us normal people, I mean, I would probably say I don't know, right? Guys, what do you think? What do you think the responses are going to be as the polls come in?
50-50.
Yeah? Yeah, all right. Okay, maybe say we have.
I think maybe most people have.
All right, well, you have good faith in our group. Well, and you know what? We do have the best group and the best looking group. So I'm gonna go with what Natalie said. It's probably a little bit more. We have almost 80, we got, okay, over 80% of you voted. So I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll and share those results with y'all so you can check them out.
Oh, wow.
And there you go, Natalie. Once again, you were right. 65% yes, 24% no, and 12% don't know. So, Rick, I mean, is this something that you guys see kind of on a regular basis, that there are some organizations out there that don't have a data standard or a data dictionary?
Yes, absolutely. And I would also like to add to that, a tool like we're going to be previewing today will not work without that. So it's kind of like elementary. That's what we need. You need to start with your company, is to develop that standard and that data dictionary where you know how you want your data to come in.
Good deal. Well, thank you, Rick. I appreciate you walking us through what you're about to walk us through, and I'm sure it's probably a whole nother podcast to talk about how to get a data dictionary. But if you are a PODS member, there is one that comes with with your membership. So that's where we think is the best place to start. Again, I'm a little biased. So, but anyway, thank you, Rick, so much for being here, and Natalie and Crash as well. I'm going to turn my camera off and leave it to y'all to run us through.
All right, thanks, Monique. Thanks for that introduction. Actually, yes, the PODS data dictionary is a good place to start. Every company is going to have your unique things that you need to add to or take away, but that's a good starting point. So today, guys, I'm going to be going through some slides. I'm going to try to get through them pretty quickly where Natalie can get on with the demo, but I'd like to start with a little bit of a verbal roadmap on how we got to this point, and we being our industry. So I've been in the oil and gas industry a long time. As a matter of fact, CAD and GIS did not exist early in my career. So we worked on Mylar maps, county maps, quad sheets, our alignment sheets and piping drawings, et cetera. Everything was hard copy, right? So the key person in the group was called a checker. So he had to look at all of this stuff. So if the checker found an error, you had to erase everything that he found wrong and physically redraw it. So rework loops were very, very costly. So milestone 1 came with the introduction of CAD. So rework loops were greatly reduced, so we could do it a lot quicker. But what came with that was the engineers knew rework could be turned around quickly, so the diligence on the design side fell off. They would tend to kind of throw things together because they knew you could turn it around and fix it quickly. So it had its trade-offs. Milestone number 2 came with the introduction of GIS. So we began to be able to analyze data, you know, produce maps with base map data, etc. The caveat of this is the project still utilized hard copy versions of these electronic systems to document their projects. So at the end of the day, operators were still left with boxes of paper. So since that time, we've moved on, and beyond that point, we have standardized models like PODS and enterprise databases to house our compliance data and documentation. However, the QA/QC process has remained fairly static. So the industry still has that, like I mentioned before, that checker mentality that they're using. We were using this 40 or 50 years ago, so it's kind of crazy that we still have that same thing going on. So today, I'm here to tell you that I believe we are at a new milestone. So I think milestone number 3 is an automated QA/QC with software. So what I mean by that, it's a 100% repeatable process. It's a 100% accurate process, all performed in a fraction of the time as traditional QA/QC. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So before I jump in, I like to always talk about this just a bit and to make a point. And I would be willing to bet that most of us have a job related to regulations. That's why we're here listening to this, right? So these regulations are rolling out constantly. Notices the proposed rulemaking with PHMSA are stacking up as we speak. And here's the fact that you may not have thought of. So if it were not for regulations, you and I would probably not be in the job we're in. We might not even be in the industry that we're in. So the regs, you know, we complain and we complain and we gripe, but they're a double-edged sword. They're good and they're bad. But the good being is we have a job, right? So let's dig in and look at what we have to show you today. So I'm going to try to get through this without sounding salesy. So I'm going to do my best. So what we're going to be talking about is a comprehensive compliance management system that's built for the industry sector, and it simplifies all of these complex regulations. And maintaining traceable, verifiable, and complete documentation at the same time with an automated tool that validates that stuff as it comes in. And it has customizable workflows. And what it does is get you ready for those audits when they walk in the door. And I know a lot of you guys know about that, and it's not fun. So you're ready to get through that audit when it comes in. Okay, Monique, there you go. So a little bit about the role of a tool like this. If you look to the right and the yellow, so you see your vendors, your engineering companies or your survey companies. And as you move to the left, you see them pushing data upload into a tool like this. And you see the GIS analyst at the top there kind of managing the tool, looking at the results. If it's not satisfactory, then he can return it to the vendor, right? He can send it right back to where it came from. If he is satisfied or he does a few fixes, then he can push that compliant data in a PODS format on over to the PODS loading area and push it to production. I'd like to point out here too that the vendor could also use a tool like this on his side before he actually pushes it to the operator, which is really going to streamline things. And as we all know, operators like to keep metrics and you know, who's doing good, who's doing bad. So this would help that situation. If you're sending all good data to them, they're going to continue to use you. All right, Manute, there you go. So operator challenges that we're seeing. We see, and I'm preaching to the choir here, but we see data silos. You see fragmented, siloed data all across your organization. And it makes gathering that stuff up difficult in a rush. So you got to go to different files, different boxes, different people, whatever the case may be, to get your project stuff pulled together in the case of an audit or, you know, a release, whatever you need or whatever's going on. And then we see these manual QA/QC processes that are very labor intensive and costly. And this is kind of the area that we're focusing on here. And 2 and 3 kind of come together. Say you spend a day QCing some data, you have to send it back to your surveyor. He fixes it, he brings it back. You have to spend another complete day. You don't know what all he changed. So this is where the iterations get very, very costly. You keep having this rework loop, sending that stuff back and forth to your vendor. Compliance risk. So incomplete and inaccurate documentation increases your risk, as you know, especially in these regulatory situations. So you go into them and you're like, the question mark is in your brain. Do I have everything I need? Do I have all the gaps filled? What are they going to get me on? So having a tool like this almost eliminates your risk. So you can feel very confident when you walk in the room. I know my data is good, and it takes on a whole new aspect of these audits. And 5 is the audits. Preparing for those is challenging and time consuming. And some of you guys have probably been involved in some of these. You have a field audit of some sort, and everybody is in the scramble mode, looking for hydro tests, looking for MTRs, looking for welder certs, everything. You got to pull that stuff together in a hurry and get it in front of the auditor. Okay. So a little bit about how a tool like this works. Starting at your upper left here, you bring in that customized model like your PODS model. Okay. So you bring that in and customize it to fit your needs. Secondly, as you move around clockwise, you configure the rules that you want this data to comply with, your structural, your business, and your spatial rules. So when it comes in, it sees these rules and it's a yay or a nay, right? The next part is that yay or nay, the data validation. You got to go through that, or the tool will go through that automatically, and coming out the other side is your gap reporting. So you can see everything that's wrong with that data and take action on it. And then you have customized workflows, so you can route this through your stakeholders in your organization that need to see that. And I'll show you a little bit here next. But the appropriate people that are engaged in your organization that needs to see this data and approve this data. And then lastly, your data export that starts making its way to your enterprise database. So example of a workflow like I just mentioned in this first slide here. So you focus on the import data, the lower left, and let's move on to the next slide there, Monique. First, and this is an example, it doesn't have to be like this, but usually it comes into an analyst. The analyst sees the errors, does something to them to correct them or return them. And then next slide, Monique, they kind of push this stuff on through the workflow, so it may go to a gatekeeper. The gatekeeper looks at what the analyst has observed or what the analyst has fixed. Very quickly, he's able to push that on to the next person in the workflow, which is maybe your GIS manager or the person in charge of loading your enterprise database. So he can feel very confident at that point, this data is good. You know, regulatory wise, I'm good to go. I'm going to load it.
That's really cool. So this is, Rick, it's kind of like I know I said I wasn't going to put my camera on and I wasn't going to talk, but you know, I can't help myself. It's like, this seems to me to be kind of like, you know, they have the pre-check on OSAVE before you submit your annual report. It seems to be kind of like that. So it's kind of like a pre-check to figure out what's going on before you start doing all the digging, right?
Actually, that's one of the uses for it, and I think I have some slides to talk about that. But an MPMS report or whatever your report is, you can configure your tool and run that through the tool and be assured that you have it right. Because I know some of you guys listening to this have had stuff returned from MPMS or whatever the case may be, because they're running algorithms and different things on their data, on your data, that tell them what's wrong with it. So hey, why not get it right before you send it?
Yeah. Now, you know, in my, you know, in my previous life, right, before I was at PODS, we did a lot of TVC stuff, and there was a must-have and a nice-to-have, right, insofar as looking for the data. So do you, you know, I guess one of my questions is, can you change what the system is looking for, or you know, once you set it up, then that's it?
No, absolutely, you can change it, and Natalie can elaborate on that. You can do what you want to do. The tool does what you tell it to do.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so very much unlike my husband, right? Is that what you're saying? Like not like Michael at all, right?
No,
Yeah,
very flexible and configurable. I'm sorry, Natalie.
Yeah, no, I was just going to mention that you're able to set up a pod structure, or you can set up one specifically for MPMS, all those types of things. Or if you were asking about configurability generally, yes, after initial setup, you can absolutely make changes to the model that you initially created.
All right, cool. Cool.
And it could be an internal report that we have no idea as we're sitting here talking about, but it's a spreadsheet that you have in your organization or a database that you have to produce for someone else that has some kind of standard to it, right? So you can configure that and push it through it before it goes.
Okay. Yeah, so like, you know, while you're in there looking for this TVC specific data, if you want to get, you know, depth of cover, whatever, you know, so that you can use that to run risk later, you can tell the system what to do.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Okay, so we have just under 70% of those have voted on this quick poll. So everybody, please put your responses in on how does your company manage source data and documents to support TVC and other regulatory compliance regulations. So option 1 is an in-house team. Option 2, third party, and then option 3 is no process to manage currently. So if everybody can pick on the poll here. All right, good. We're about 80% of you voted, so I'll go ahead and close the poll. And I don't think you guys are going to be very surprised by these results, and that you know, it's an in-house team. And you know, that's difficult sometimes because people just don't always have the resources, right? I mean, nowadays you're lucky to only have one job and one paycheck. Most of the time people have 3 jobs and just the one paycheck. So I bet this is difficult for in-house.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what this is all about, right? A tool like this frees up those resources. It minimizes that pull on them.
Right, right. Interesting, very interesting. All right, so thanks everybody for responding to that poll. We have a couple more polls coming up, but Rick, if you don't mind, take us through what you guys have done so far.
Okay. So some use cases for a tool like this. Over on the left, you have legacy projects, which, by the way, at some point, when you're an old guy like me, and probably some of the guys on here, you know, when this digital transformation that we went through as an industry, everything was legacy, right? Everything was Mylar, paper, and whatever. So we had to convert stuff like that, and a lot of it still is. So your legacy projects, new construction, QA, QC, that your project manager just walks up and dumps on you, right? He gives you all this stuff, so you got to get through a QA, QC. Here's a big one that I think, identifying gaps in your current enterprise database. So you got your PODS model sitting there in your database, and you have all this data in it, but you're not quite sure of your gaps. So you can take out that girth weld table or coding table or whatever it is, and run it through the tool, and you know your gaps. You know the state of the union of your data. It helps you prioritize what do I work on, or what's, you know, our worst case where we don't have any data. So you kind of know without an auditor telling you when he's in the room with you. So the middle one is the most used, I think, where survey data is coming in the door. You're having to QC these databases on new construction. You're having to QC that, taking up a lot of time. So this is where a tool like this really saves you some time and money. And then the customized tools, we just talked about the MPMS and all those different mileage reports, whatever the case may be. They have standards that you have to comply to when you turn those in. And then it tends to centralize all of your stuff when you run it through a tool. So you got to bring it to the tool and run it through. So it tends to have you put it in one place, right? Because you know where it's at, you got your hands on it. Let's get it put where we need to, where we can, especially into the database.
So Rick, we had a question that came in real quick. If you don't mind, I'm gonna throw it at you because it kind of pertains to this. So what format does the data need to be in to be ingested into this product?
So
spreadsheets, KMZs, they put etc.
Yeah, so geodatabase, MDB, CSV. So that's your 3 types currently.
Okay, good deal.
Click that one more time, Monique, please. This is a 2-part. So we start what I'm going to do is start kind of giving you a look at what Natalie's going to show you live here in just a minute, but kind of navigating the data model here. You have uploads sections where you can upload that database that we talked about. You have sections where you can create the rule set or bring in rule sets you've already created, and she will talk about that as well. Typical functionality like select all, you know, that we see in ArcMap or GIS Pro and AutoCAD. You know, you can select all your features, you can select 1 or 2. So that typical functionality, your deletes, I'm not going to belabor that. And then at the lower part, you can see where you configure more rules, your business rules, your spatial rules. An example of an MPMS submission where you're all uppercase, period, spaces, backlashes, colons, commas, hyphens, all that stuff is omitted. So this is the kind of stuff that you could plug in here. Okay. Moving on to the rule configuration, at the upper section here, you have structural rules. So what this is that your tables and your attributes, how you want your attributes or what you want your data coming in to conform to, right? So your mins and your max, your decimal places, the format that it needs to be in when it comes in, all these different parameters that you have to see your data because it will not load in your PODS database. And then you have your business rules, which are what we're really more familiar with is like your gaps and your overlaps and your diameters and all these different things that have to comply, your domains, your grades, like you said a grade can't be empty with TVC, right? So that's gonna flag, it's a mandatory field.
Right.
And then you have your spatial rules that you set to where your XYZ data is going to be coming from and how you're going to display it in your map, etc. Okay. Then there's a section for your advanced users, your SQL guys, to create these advanced queries to do even more complex things. If you can write it into the tool, it will do it. It will perform that when it comes across. So this is the advanced area. And then the next one, Monique, we get to standard tools, the kind of drag and drops where just like a person like me can get in here and just drag things over and create a rule to what I want the data to look like, because I'm not going to get in there and write a bunch of SQL.
Yeah, Rick, this section looks more like for me and you, whereas the previous one looks more like super nerd for Crash, right? That's where the one before is where Crash is going to mess around and figure out some really cool stuff versus, me and you just building a couple of dashboards, right?
Yes. We'll be really excited.
Good, Rick.
I was going to say we'd be real excited if we can get the simple one to work, right, Monique?
Exactly.
we could build a query or something out there. It would be tickled.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I just want to add that you can also build tool inside Mosaic if you're doing a migration project. You're migration from PODS 5 to PODS 7. You can build your own tool and do that migration project on Mosaic itself.
I love it. I called Crash out as a nerd, so he had to say something, right, to show everybody how cool he is, right? Crash?
You share it.
Just to add on to that too, another thing that we're working on is the compare. Actually, I think it's there, the compare tool. So you have Marty migrated, right? So you want to look at your 4.02 tables versus your 7 tables after you got it migrated. So compare the different tables and see if everything made the trip.
Gotcha. So on this quick poll, you have the option of selecting one or more of the following, and I think that really speaks to that, we really do get our data in a bunch of different ways. So the question is, how does your company receive project data? And we have just over 50% of you that have voted. So we can get a few more votes in, so that way we can get a good consensus. But I want to say it's probably going to be a good spread of everything, right? Rick, you and I talked the other day about, I wrote something on the back of a napkin and you said like a true pipeliner, right?
That's right. That's right. I have seen many napkins with
Right.
ISOs and piping plans.
Yeah. One of these days I'm going to frame one of them because the thing that I wrote out is actually going to work, right? All right, so we have over 60% of you have voted, so we'll go ahead and close the poll and share those results so everybody can see what's going on here. But yeah, so 75% MDB, GDB, 50% spreadsheets, hard copy, and it looks like the majority selected more than one option. So there you go.
Yeah, that last one, we see that a lot. People, they're not able to drive the standards in their company, so they have to accept whatever's handed to them, which makes it very difficult.
Yeah.
So moving on, here we have finally the data upload portion where you select your spatial reference of your file type or your database type. and choose the file and then upload. So while this is uploading, as soon as it gets uploaded, you instantly have a gap report. So what we're seeing on this slide is a tabbed spreadsheet. The first tab being a gap report, which is a high level with your feature class, your attribute, the error type, and the record count for the affected records. So when it got uploaded, this is what the tool saw as it came in. You can see on crossing transportation that's highlighted, you have surface and you have transportation type domains, that there's something going on with 12 of them in each one of those. So in order to look at that, you can go to the tabbed section below and you see crossing transportation tab. So every feature class has a tab when it comes up. So when you open, back up just a bit.
Sorry.
That's okay. When you open crossing transportation tab, you see inside the spreadsheet, the affected records are highlighted. So you know exactly where your problem is and what needs to be done. So if you don't, or if you've looked at this and you say, hey, I want to look at the data, you go directly into the tool, okay? So this is looking at the results in the tool. You can notice on the left, you can see everything that's red is a problem area. So everything it's either a null or it's got some kind of error, excuse me. So in the first column, you see some overlap issues. It points out exactly where they are. Moving across, you see a lot of empty values, null values that are mandatory. They have to be populated right. And then you see a string error, something's too long. Moving on to the middle, you see some decimal problems where you have 3 decimal places and your requirement is 2. So it points those out. And then over to the right, you see some domain errors. So looking a little bit harder at this one, API 1104 is a welding specification. It's very common. We use it all across the industry. So what's happened is someone dragged 1104 down in the spreadsheet like we all do, and he created 1105, 1106. So you immediately kind of pick up on that. So in the tool, all of this is editable. When you have a red mark, you can click on that. You can fix that. You can change it to 1104 in both of those cases, and you can revalidate it. Those errors are gone. And you can do that as many times as you want to. If you know what the answer is, you can fix it. So you can do all of your work really quickly on the fly as you're bringing this stuff in. If it's a little much for you to do, you can download the CSV of this table, download it, open it up, the errors will be highlighted, you fix the errors, you re-upload it. So it's as simple as that. It's a few-minute process and you're good to go. You revalidate, your errors are gone. So you can quickly, there's no more spending a day or two working and trying to fix this stuff. You can do it right here as you're working and looking at this data.
That's awesome, Rick. I'm going to speed you along a little bit to make sure that Natalie has enough time to do her demo real quick.
Okay. Real quickly, this is just your data export and pushing it out to a GDB, MDB, or whatever, and you're viewing again this screen in Pro. So you're seeing your data, you're seeing all your attributes, etc. So I think we have one more. So.
Oh yeah, we have another poll question, so we'll do that real quick. So how does your company QC project data prior to loading into your enterprise database? I think there's an assumption here that says that people are QCing their project data prior to loading it into an enterprise database. Of course, not anybody on this call, right? But I mean, we've seen this happen, right? People just, you throw the job book over the fence, right? And you're like, okay, well, y'all figure it out, right?
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. So if we can, everybody vote on your, select one of the following, which is either outside resources, in-house team, software solution, or no QC. And oh, look, people are actually being honest. This is great. Good job. Well, it's anonymous, so you can rest assured we're not going to tell anybody. But We got, let's see, over 60% of you have voted. So we'll go ahead and close the poll and share the results with everybody. That's great. So 62%
There you go.
again, right?
Yep.
In-house team. So the people that are already strapped, right, for resources are doing that. So doesn't look like anybody has a software solution. So I'm guessing
Yeah,
that's
this is where a tool really can make you lean and efficient.
yeah. That's probably why this podcast is so popular. There's so many people on it because nobody's got one. So, all right, with that, I think you have one more slide here, and then we're going to hand it over to Natalie.
Let me close out with this. This is some actual feedback that we got from the tool. So this could be all over the place, right? But this is what the feedback we got. Data recycle time. So traditionally, the teams were spending 3 to 5 days recycling data, and with a tool like this, they went to minutes. So you see a big savings right there. Coding script capacity, typically there's 10 to 15% tradition in the team that could do that. Using a tool like this, it's replaced with scripting options. You saw that advanced if you want to, but you don't have to be, right? Configuration capacity, you had none before, and now you're 100% configurable what you need. Data completeness and accuracy, we're seeing a spread of the traditional way of 70%, whereas you're 100% because it's repeatable and it's the same way every time. Consistency, same thing, 80% consistent before, but now they're 100% consistent. And the correction time, of course, this is based on database size, but they came back with 6 to 8 hours versus using a tool 30 to 60 minutes. So they're spending an hour versus 8.
So Rick, I know you didn't want to be salesy, but while I'm handing it off to Natalie, you know, we did have a question that is somewhat salesy, so I have to ask it because it came in on the questions box. Is this available to vendor? Some softwares on the market are only sold to operators. Do you offer this to service companies as well?
Absolutely. I think it's a valuable tool for service vendors to be able to QC data before it gets to the operator. That makes you look good, right?
Yeah. All right, cool. So we got a couple more questions. You guys keep those questions coming in, but for now, we're going to hand it off to Natalie. So she's going to walk us through a live demo.
Thanks, Monique. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate you getting all that information out there for everybody. So I'm just going to start here in the Mosaic tool on the data model tab. This will be the first thing you did when you got Mosaic. You would want to set up a basic data model and your rules for pushing your projects through for the validation. So let's take a look at Elbow, for example. So here you can see on the left that we have all of our feature classes, and on the right we have the attributes and the parameters around those attributes here. So I wanted to mention that the structural rules are imported directly from your MDB or GDB. So this was not set up individually one by one. This section was imported directly. The only thing that we do set up here is these mandatory buttons. So these are something that you would use to denote this is a mandatory attribute. But say, for instance, that your import was slightly wrong, you are absolutely able to come here and even change your data types. Or a common one that we see is on measure, you might need to change your decimal places, your scale. And so if you wanted to do something like that, it's as easy as 2 clicks. And so now that change has been saved.
So Natalie, this would be the schema or the operator's data model that you're pulling in the seed.
That's right. You'd use like a GDB or an MDB. I mean, you can use a CSV, but that's not going to have as much information to
Typically, they'll
import.
provide it. Yep.
This particular one is a PODS 7 GDB that I used. So after structural rules, we come down here to business rules. So business rules is completely set up by the user. This is extra additional on top of your schema, things that you might want to check for. So here in Elbow, we can see that we have at the bottom a duplicate validation, just verifying that the unique ID is unique to all the features, to all the records within the feature class. And these reference validations are all pertaining to domains. So for instance, at the top here, it's saying, hey, for this Elbow feature class on the attribute grade, I want you to check the Elbow grade code lookup and show me that it matches in the code column. Additionally, we have spatial rules that can be set up. Let me move over to pipe segment. Let's go back 1 second. Here is just an example of what Rick mentioned earlier. You've got gap and overlap when you have appropriate linear feature class. And we also have some invalidation checks that you can use. And if we go to, sorry, my screen's blocked a little bit. Get around there. Okay, sorry about that. So here we have where we can set up, is this a point, line, polygon? Where am I getting the shape information? And here you're able to set up your symbology. And this will show up on the map tab. So once you have your data model set up, most of the action happens here in the workspace tab. This is where you're going to upload your actual project data that you got from your sources, your vendors, survey, whoever. This is just showing me, hey, you made that change in the data model and you need to revalidate it for it to be shown. So that I'm just going to ignore it for the moment. Let's go down to pipe segment and look at how a couple of these look in here. So here we have a couple of duplicate identifiers, and that's really bad because we know we all need our identifier to be actually unique. So I'm just going to give this a little click and give it a fix. So I know I just need to probably change 1 digit in this grid. And I'll just change that A to a B. And I'll save. And now it's prompting me to refresh the page so that I can see that correction. And so it was just that easy to remove the errors from those records. Alternately, if you wanted to do a mass correction, let's say over here let's go to Girthweld. So over here in Girthweld, I can see that we have a missing mandatory attribute, the type. So if I just hover over this, it tells me exactly what the error is. And so this would be when you might want to do a mass update because you've got this whole column that's empty. In that case, you can just download your CSV and make your corrections in the CSV and then re-upload it, and it will make that mass correction. So if you wanted to take an overall look of what was going on before even deciding if you were going to make those corrections, you would take a look at the gap report. And so I can see here, let's go down to something everybody can relate to, like the pipe segment. So we can see in pipe segment that we've got overlap, gap, decimal place mismatch, and domain issues going on. So if I wanted to look at the details of that, I would click on over to that tab within here and scroll over until I start seeing some highlights. And so here's where we have those gaps and overlaps. This is a domain issue, but if you were unclear what the highlights meant, if you scroll all the way over to the right, you have your errors column, and each error that is involved in this record is listed here. So as a summary type thing, you can see here on my girth weld, for example, that there are 262 records. And of those 262, all of them have at least one error. Over here, this larger number is adding up the numbers because some records might have multiple errors on them. So that's your total amount of errors for that feature class. Quickly, I'll just go over and show you the map where I had already had the center line set up. And this little arrow is just indicating a quick indicator of which direction the line is flowing. And that's just a quick, okay, did they do this right, or did they need to reverse it and flip it? Because that's a common thing that happens. And then finally, over here on the dashboard, it's just, if you shared this with some stakeholders, this might be the area where they would go to kind of see what's going on. And so just as an example, if I go to pipe segment, you can see I've got all sorts of issues being called out, and it's just showing the percentage based on the error counts. Over here, you would be able to see if there was an error with one of your advanced queries, that number would show here. This is a summary of each of the feature classes and the numbers of errors found. And this goes back to being specific about your pipe segment, which we're on right now. So you can see the feature count and the error counts. And that will wrap up what I am going to cover in the demo.
Great job, Natalie. It's again, it's always nerve-wracking when I watch people do live demos of softwares. You're rooting for them. You did a great job. We did have a question come in a couple minutes ago when you were talking about the spatial. So this is what types of spatial rules can be applied?
So we're working on adding quite a few to our inventory of spatial stuff, but right now we have a check on whether M values are present at all. So just if the M value is null or not. And we also have the ability to check whether the stations or measures within your table match the actual M values of the spatial part of your data. Let me think. And other than that, it's just about defining whether it's a point, line, polygon, and defining the symbology. That's also part of the rule part of it, I guess.
So there's another question kind of related to that. So can you store domains here to point back to a dynamic segment? So I'm guessing maybe the documents or something, like, are you, I'm not sure what the question is kind of asking. So maybe it means something around, you're going to have a domain set up for each document and tied back in your system of record to that dynamic segment of pipe. But this is not connected to your, system of record, right? This is just a separate outside software that's running query. Okay. All right. So maybe that answers your question. If that didn't answer your question, can you please
Yeah.
give more detail?
Or feel free to contact us.
Please reach out or somehow or another. We will answer all the questions that don't get addressed here.
Okay. And then there's another one. We have time for one more. Can this be shared with multiple stakeholders?
Yes.
Absolutely.
In the organization, I think that's probably what they're, a whole team can work from this.
Okay. All right.
And one thing I don't think we talked about, Natalie, is these are reusable, right? You can bring them in already ready to go. So you have a common rule set for your company. So analyst A or analyst B can pull that in later, and they're working on the same sheet of music.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. We just have a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to steal them for pods. Just want to give everybody an update real quick on, we're doing a lot of stuff right now. There's a lot of working groups, plenty of opportunity for you to jump in and join and volunteer your time with all of these big brain people. A lot of working groups, CP, offshore, TVC, ILI is already ready to rock and roll, and then SCADA-Link as well. So we have the Integrity Regulatory Task Module that's available right now to be tested if people want to check it out. And I just want to say thanks again so much to the Petro IT team for, I believe you guys might be on every single one of these groups. You guys donate a lot of time and energy and effort and volunteerism, especially Rick, who's one of our board members and also our officer, secretary, and also, everything. And also, a shoulder for me to cry on a regular basis. So everybody please make sure you save the date for the fall forum coming up in October. It's going to be at Topgolf. So we're not even messing around. We're having the forum at the actual place where we are going to have the social as well. So you have to sign up for 3 things. You have to sign up for the forum. You have to sign up for the joint social that we're doing with Esri. So Esri's not doing a social after their event the next day. We're doing a joint social in between our events. So our fall forum, then the social that evening with both of us. And then you have to also sign up for the Esri pipeline fall seminar that they're doing in Houston. So 3 things all back to back. It's going to be great. And then also we have a bunch of events coming up, the Esri pipeline seminars, the NAPSR. I'm going to be at IPCE in Calgary. We're having a PODS International mini forum there. Thank you so much to Petro IT and Geonamic and also Esri for sponsoring that. We're all going to be up there in Calgary, so y'all come out. We're expecting about 50 international PODS members and future members. There's only 2 types of people in the world, either you're a PODS member or you're a future member, to be joining us there. So please come out if you can there. Yep. And then our next PODSCast is going to be, what's that?
We'll be there as well.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. It's going to be great. And Enbridge is coming, and TC Energy, and all of our members from a lot of them from all over the world. So yeah, and then we have a whole bunch of other stuff online, and then next year we have a bunch of events too. So please make sure that you're keeping abreast of all of the stuff going on. Again, thank you so much to the Petro IT crew. Great job on this podcast. We're going to download it and make it available on the website, and I'm going to send the rest of the questions to the group so they'll get back with you guys on your questions that we didn't get to cover. And again, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you everybody for joining.
Thanks, guys.
Taking on time. Thank you.
Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.